She hadn't ordered anything in over an hour. Just a cup of tea, gone cold by now. And the cafe owner, a man named Jerry, had quietly stopped checking on her. He could read the situation. Some customers needed service. This one needed a corner, some warmth, and to be left alone. She was sitting at the window table, the one with the wobbly leg. Outside, the Edinburgh sky had gone the color of old dishwater. January does that. Presses everything flat until the whole city feels like it's operating at half capacity. On the table in front of her, a mug, a pen running low on ink, and a battered spiral notebook she'd bought from a charity shop, the only kind of paper she could afford to keep in any quantity. Page after page, both sides, filled in her own handwriting. She wrote on whatever she had, and right now, this notebook was what she had. Her coat was draped over the back of the chair. She'd put it there when she arrived because the cafe was warm, but also maybe because she wanted to signal, to herself or to nobody in particular, that she wasn't going anywhere soon. She had 3 hours before she needed to pick up Jessica from her sisters. She was going to use all of them. She was 28 years old, and her life had come apart at the seams. The marriage had broken down in Portugal, where she'd been living with her husband. When it became clear there was nothing left to save, she didn't wait for the paperwork. She packed a suitcase, took her baby daughter Jessica, only a few months old, and came back to Britain. The divorce itself wouldn't be finalized until a year later, but she was already gone. She was living on government benefits, £70 a week. That number sounds like something until you start running through the actual costs. Rent, food, electricity, nappies, formula, the endless small expenses that come with keeping a newborn alive. It didn't stretch. Most weeks, there was a point near the end where she was just watching the number get smaller. Some months, the heating bill didn't get paid. Jessica didn't notice, or pretended not to. Kids are gracious like that. Her doctor had diagnosed her with clinical depression roughly 6 months after she'd landed back in the country. Not the kind people use loosely. The kind that makes getting out of bed feel like wading through wet sand. The kind that turns returning a phone call or buying milk into decisions that require more mental energy than they should. She got up anyway, fed Jessica. When the baby needed settling, she'd bundle her into the pram and walk the streets until Jessica fell asleep, then slip into the nearest cafe and write for as long as the nap held. This cafe, Jerry's place, was warm and familiar. Nobody rushed her out. Her sister, Diane, patient, practical, loving in a way that didn't quite disguise the worry underneath, had asked her once, carefully, whether the writing could wait. "You're on benefits," Diane said. "I'm not judging. I just think maybe getting stable first might make more sense." She nodded. She understood. She kept writing. The idea itself had come to her years earlier. She'd been sitting on a delayed train between Manchester and London, staring out the window, and suddenly, without any warning, an entire world had arrived in her head, fully formed. A boy who didn't know what he was. A hidden world, running quietly alongside the ordinary one. The boy's name came first, then everything else poured in behind it, like someone had opened a tap. She hadn't had a pen, of all the times. She'd spent 4 hours on that train trying to hold the whole thing in her head, piece by piece, terrified that if she stopped concentrating it would evaporate. None of it had evaporated. Through everything that followed, the marriage going wrong by degrees, the move, the pregnancy, the whole slow unraveling, the story had sat in the back of her mind like a pilot light, always there, waiting for someone to turn on the gas. Now she was turning on the gas, one cafe table at a time. The manuscript took a long time snatched from whatever windows opened up, when Jessica slept, when Diane took her for a few hours, late evenings after the baby went down. She wrote in the flat, at the library, at this cafe. She wrote on whatever she had. When it was finally done, all 77,000 words, she borrowed a typewriter from a neighbor and typed the whole thing out. Then she did something that would strike most people as borderline heroic in its tedium. She typed it again, from scratch. Her original working draft was so heavily crossed out, rewritten and annotated in the margins that it had become practically illegible, and she couldn't even afford a pack of carbon paper to make a clean copy the easy way. So she typed every word twice. Her hands ached for days afterward. She put the pages in a manila folder. She sat with it for a moment. This thing she'd been carrying around in her head for years, now sitting quietly on a kitchen table next to a half-eaten piece of toast. Then she looked up literary agents in a handbook she'd borrowed from the public library. She sent out query letters to literary agents. The rejections came back quickly. Form letters mostly. A few with a handwritten line or two that didn't soften the no. She kept sending. After several months of this, a letter arrived that wasn't a rejection. A literary agent named Christopher had read her pages and wanted to represent her. For a moment, sitting at the kitchen table, she let herself feel something she'd been keeping at arm's length for a long time. Hope. This is it. Someone in the industry believes in this. It wasn't it. Not yet. But she didn't know that. Christopher sent the manuscript out to the major London publishers, and the letters started coming back. The first one, not commercially viable. The second, children's books are a very difficult market. The third, fourth, fifth, all some version of the same message. Polite form letters, clinically professional tone. A very well-mannered, slammed door. These weren't random rejections anymore. These were people whose job it was to know what would sell, and they were all landing on the same conclusion. Children's books don't make money. That was the industry's unwritten rule, and nobody was apologizing for it. By the 8th major publisher, something had shifted. Because this wasn't the same as being turned down when she was alone at a kitchen table with a notebook. She had a professional agent in her corner, a real one. And it still wasn't enough. That's a different kind of no. That one gets under your skin. She wasn't sleeping properly. She'd stopped telling Diane how it was going because there was nothing new to report, and she was tired of seeing the careful look on her sister's face. One evening, Jessica was asleep. The flat was quiet, the radiator ticking the way old radiators do when they're doing their best. She went into the bathroom and sat down on the cold tile floor with her back against the wall. And she cried for a while. Not loudly. Just the way you cry when you've been holding it together so long that your arms finally give out and you stop pretending you can keep carrying it. She sat there until it stopped. Then she washed her face and went to bed. Publisher number 12 sent their response on a Thursday in January. Clean envelope, standard letter, the usual polite language. She opened it at the kitchen table. Jessica was eating cereal across from her, legs swinging under the chair, completely wrapped up in her own small world, not remotely concerned with the piece of paper in her mother's hands. She put the letter down. She and Christopher talked. He hadn't given up. Neither, quietly, had she. There was one more option. A small publisher, a modest imprint, not one of the giants. Worth trying. She thought, why not? One more. Not a declaration, not the moment where the music swells. Just, she wasn't quite ready to be the kind of person who had stopped. The small publisher was run by a man named Nigel. Christopher sent the manuscript. Nigel received it, skimmed the cover letter, and set the pages on his desk to look at properly later. That evening, he brought them home. His daughter Alice was 8 years old. She found the pages on the kitchen table, started reading the first chapter out of curiosity, and didn't stop. When Nigel came to find her, she looked up and told him, with the complete authority of an 8-year-old who has made up her mind,
"Dad, you have to publish this."
Nigel read it himself that night. He called Christopher the next morning. The advance was £2,500. Not nothing, but close. The editor, apparently, suggested with a straight face that she not quit her day job. She didn't mention that she didn't have one. The book came out the following summer. First print run, 500 copies, most of them sent directly to school libraries. Not a commercial launch, more like a quiet drop into the world. For a little while, nothing much happened. And then the children found it. Zero marketing budget, no fancy critics, just kids passing a battered copy down the school hallway, whispering about it on the school bus, pressing it into a friend's hands in the library corridor. "You have to read this." The oldest distribution method in existence, and still the most powerful one. Word spread. Then it spread faster. Then an American publisher made an offer for the rights. Then several others. A bidding war developed. She was standing at a payphone when her agent read out the final number. $105,000. She asked him to repeat it. She stood there for a moment after they'd said goodbye, just standing in the Edinburgh cold, holding the receiver like she wasn't quite sure what to do with her hands. Within a decade, she had become one of the best-selling authors in recorded history. More than 600 million copies of her books have been sold worldwide, translated into 85 languages, 8 films, a theme park, a stage production still running in New York, a cultural landmark that 3 generations of readers now share. The children who grew up with her books are adults now, in their 30s and 40s, and many of them still reread them when the world gets difficult and they want to be somewhere that makes sense. Her name is Joanne, but you know her as J.K. Rowling. And the boy she wrote about, the one who didn't know what he was worth, who found out the world he'd been living in was only half the story, is Harry Potter. The whole thing began in that Edinburgh cafe, in a charity shop notebook, written by a woman who had been turned down 12 times, even with a professional agent fighting for her, and who once sat on a bathroom floor and seriously considered giving up. She didn't keep going because she knew the ending. She wasn't operating on certainty. She wasn't the motivational poster version of herself, full of blazing conviction and unshakable faith. She was tired, stretched thin, and her work had been rejected not just by strangers, but by people who actually wanted to believe in it. She sent one more letter because she wasn't quite done yet. That's the whole decision. Not forever, just not done yet. There's an old saying, you never know how close you are. And maybe that's true. But perhaps that's not quite the point. Because she didn't keep going, because she suspected success was just around the corner. She kept going because stopping felt like a permanent answer to what might still be a temporary problem. So if you're in the middle of something right now, something that keeps hitting a wall, something that people around you have quietly stopped asking about because there hasn't been good news to share in a while, maybe that's worth sitting with. You don't have to have it figured out. You don't have to feel sure. You just have to decide whether you're done. And if the answer is not quite yet, then you already know what to do next.